We continue further with module number 5 titled Rectifiers and Filters for the subject Electronic Devices abbreviated ED with the subject code ACC 302. Once again, welcome to the entire batch of SE Electronics and Computer Science Semester 3. For today's particular video lecture session, we'll be completing the unit number 5.1 for the chapter module number 5 by taking the bridge type full wave rectifier circuit. As per the syllabus, there are two main units, 5.1 as well as 5.2. In the previous lecture earlier, we had covered unit number 5.1. The topic was the full wave center tapped rectifier circuit, for which we saw the entire working, the operation, the construction, as well as in-depth expressions which included derivation for the DC or the average output voltage, the RMS value of the AC output voltage, the DC or the average value of the output current, the RMS component of the AC output current, as well as the ripple factor. For today's video lecture session, we shall be focusing on the second type, that is the bridge type rectifier circuit. And just as we did in the previous case, we will be studying its construction, circuit diagram, operation, and once again going through the detailed mathematical analysis for derivation of the output voltage, which includes both DC and RMS, the output current, which again includes AC as well as RMS, and finally ripple factor. We'll be covering the second unit 5.2 later on. So starting off with the module number 5, unit number 5.1, the bridge type full wave rectifier circuit. Starting from the previous video, we had covered the center tap full wave rectifier circuit. So in case if you are yet to revise some certain fundamental concepts, it is highly recommended that you go through this particular YouTube lecture first. Starting off, we had seen that a lot of electronic gadgets that we commonly use, such as tablets, headphones, computer, mouse, cameras, mobile phones, cordless phones, etc. These are all electronic gadgets which are used for computing applications, communication applications, as well as entertainment purposes, something without which we cannot live in this 21st century. Apart from using them normally to the best possible extent, one very important thing that these gadgets need, aside from proper care, is that they need a proper, stable, and a smooth, continuous power supply for their operation. While stable and smooth can be provided by the DC supply derived from batteries, continuous is a bit of a concern because DC batteries tend to deplete easily. The capacity is a big matter of concern. So the option is to go for a continuous AC power supply, which we all have in our houses, of 230 volts AC, 50 hertz capacity, because we all have a direct line that comes from the electric company service provider to our homes. So the question is that why do we use AC when all the electronics which we are using works on DC? Reason being that AC is safe and extremely efficient when it is a matter of transmission, distribution, etc. And as I had said in the earlier video lectures, by using a device called as transformers, it is very easy to step up AC or to step down AC. So with all these parts being fine, the biggest question is how do you convert AC into DC? Well, the answer was through the use of devices called as rectifiers. These are electronic circuits that employ PN junction diodes, which are used to convert, rectify, modify, or change AC into DC. In the previous video lecture session, we had seen the center tap full wave rectifier circuit with a circuit diagram as shown. Now, if you see the positive half cycle of the operation, diode D1 was on, but diode D2 was off. So here, if you look at diode D2, the voltage across diode D2 is actually plus minus Vm and plus minus Vm, because if I just go back to the previous slide, for D2, the left hand side is the anode, the right hand side is the cathode. So this means that you have a negative potential at the anode and you have a positive potential at the cathode. Since these two voltages are in series, they will add up. So you have plus minus Vm, plus minus Vm. The answer will be twice Vm. So when diode D2 is off, reverse biased, it has to withstand a reverse bias voltage of twice Vm across it, which is definitely double the capacity of the AC input peak signal value. An exactly similar case is also seen for part B, operation during the negative half cycle of the AC input. Under these conditions, diode D1 is off, that is reverse biased, but diode D2 is on. So when D1 is off, you have a voltage of minus and plus, minus and plus. So with the left hand side being anode, the right hand side being cathode, you have a voltage of minus Vm, minus Vm. So the total voltage becomes minus twice Vm. So similar to D2, diode D1 also has to withstand a reverse bias voltage of twice the capacity of the AC input signal. Second thing that makes the center tap full wave rectifier circuit slightly complicated are the use of the center tap transformer. Although ideally the case would be using a 1 is to 1 is to 1 configuration, but it is technically very difficult to have the center tapped at the exact center of the windings. If there is a slight mismatch for the center tap, the upper half or the lower half, the voltage is available, they will be totally different. So the output voltage which you get during both the half cycles may not be of the exact same amplitude. The condition here is the center tap should be located exactly at the center of the transformer secondary winding. If the tap is located slightly more towards the upper part, the upper half will have a lower voltage compared to the lower half. Conversely, if the center tap slightly falls to the below part, you'll be having a bigger voltage on the upper half compared to the lower half. So this mismatch will not give you an equal DC rectified output voltage across the load RL. Many center tap transformers practically have a configuration 1 is to half, meaning that if you remove the center tap, they are essentially isolation transformers having a transformation ratio 1 is to 1, but the center tap is located at the exact middle, meaning that you are basically splitting the secondary voltage into two equal parts. So here, if we have a Vm, this becomes Vm by 2, this also becomes Vm by 2. So the bottom line is, with this particular center tap, which is splitting the secondary winding, the voltage which you have at the output is exactly half, or it is much lower as compared to the primary input signal voltage. Apart from this, the major disadvantages or drawbacks or demerits or limitations for the center tap full wave rectifier circuit are as follows. The first point is, of course, selecting the proper center tap transformer, which can be large and bulky and costly from the point of view of the fabrication. The second part is that you need to have a large peak inverse voltage capacity of the diode, because they need to bear or they need to withstand double the peak voltage when they are off or when they are in a reverse bias condition. Third, the output is actually half the secondary voltage, since only half the transformer is used during each half cycle. This point is of course not applicable for transformers having the configuration 1 is to 1 is to 1, but since it is very difficult to manufacture such configuration transformers, we usually have secondary transformers whose secondary voltage is only half the primary voltage. And lastly, since the transformer is not utilized completely during each half cycle, the transformer utilization factor TUF is extremely poor, because you are only using the half part of the transformer for each half cycle. So these are the four main drawbacks of the center tap full wave rectifier circuit, which is removed by studying the bridge type full wave rectifier. So this particular circuit configuration removes almost all the drawbacks associated with the center tapped full wave rectifier circuit. Again, following the same process, the circuit has four main elements. The first element is the AC input power supply shown in black, which is 230 volts AC 50 Hertz. This voltage supply is fed to the primary windings of a step down transformer. Now this is different as compared to a center tapped transformer which we have all seen earlier. You have a turns ratio of N1 is to N2, and since it is a step down transformer, the primary windings is definitely more as compared to the number of the turns on the secondary windings. So the part in blue shows the step down transformer in which the AC input power supply of 230 volts AC 50 hertz is directly applied to the primary of the step down transformer. The secondary is connected to four semiconductor diodes D1, D2, D3, D4, which are connected in a bridge configuration. Now the name comes bridge for this particular rectifier circuit because the configuration resembles to a typical Wheatstone bridge, which we have all learned in school and college, in which you have four different arms: arm 1, arm 2, arm 3, and arm 4. So the diodes D1, D2, D3, and D4 are arranged in a typical Wheatstone bridge configuration only. Hence, the name comes as a bridge type configuration. So when we start sketching the entire bridge type configuration circuits, we'll be starting with diodes D1 and D2. Both should be drawn in an exact series form. So we have the cathode pointing on top, the anode below for D1. For D3, we have the cathode pointing on top exactly in series with the anode for D1, and we have the anode for D3 pointing below. Exactly in parallel or in shunt, we need to sketch diode D2 and diode D4, where both of them have to be drawn in series. So we have the cathode terminal of D4 connected to the anode terminal of diode D2, and finally we'll be joining the cathodes of D1 and D2 together. We'll be joining the anodes of D3 and D4 together as well. The upper half or the upper part of the step down transformer secondary winding is connected at the interface of D1 and D3 as shown, while the lower half of the step down transformer secondary winding is connected at the interface of D2 and D4 as shown. So we have one connection from here, we have one connection from here, which is connected finally to the load resistor RL. This is the component across which we would like to have the rectified DC output voltage developed. So we have the value of RL connected at the output side at point number 1 and at point number 2. So taking a quick look at its basic construction details, we have the input AC power supply of 230 volts AC 50 hertz. We have a step down transformer with a configuration N1 is to N2, where N1 is nothing but number of turns of the primary, which are far more or far greater than N2, which are the number of turns of the secondary windings. We have PN junction diodes D1 and D4 connected in opposite arms of a typical bridge configuration, which is also applicable to PN junction diodes D2 and D3 because as per the circuit diagram, both were connected once again in opposite arms of a typical bridge configuration. The load RL is connected across the cathodes of D1 and D2 and the anodes of D3 and D4. This particular load RL is across which we are able to obtain the rectified DC output voltage. Let us check the operation for the first case under the positive half cycle of the AC input power supply. So once you have the positive half cycle of the AC input power supply appearing, it is from 0 to pi. So from this end, you have the topmost part as positive, you have the bottommost part as negative. So you have plus minus, and this same polarity is transferred to the step down transformer secondary winding such that the topmost part is positive and the bottommost part is negative. Please look at the circuit diagram carefully. The positive potential is now given to the anode of D1 and the cathode of D3, while the negative potential is applied now to the anode of D2 but to the cathode of D4 with respect to the ground terminal, that is 0 volts. So for D1 and D3, since the positive potential is applied to the anode of D1, D1 turns on. However, the same positive potential is applied to the cathode of diode D3, so D3 will be off. It will be in a reverse bias condition while D1 will be in a forward bias condition. For D2, the negative terminal is applied to the anode while the same negative potential is applied to the cathode of D4. So this makes D4 forward biased, turning it on, but D2 is now in a reverse bias condition, hence D2 will be off. So this equivalent circuit can be as shown. We have D1 on, which is acting like a closed switch or a typical short circuit path. We have D3 is off, it's a typical open circuit configuration. We have D2 off, so it will again be like an open circuit configuration or an open loop. We have D4 on, forward bias, so it will be behaving like a short circuit. And since we are having a positive half cycle between 0 to pi, we have the primary topmost potential as plus, the bottommost potential at minus, and for the secondary part, we have the topmost part as plus and the bottommost part as minus. Now D1 and D4 in conjunction with the load RL form a closed circuit path. So the current now flows from a point at a higher potential, that is positive, towards a point at a lower potential, that is negative. So the current starts from the secondary winding upper half, it flows through D1, it flows through the load RL. Of course, the current cannot flow through D2, it is a completely open circuit. The current flows to the load RL, and since it enters RL from top, the sign is positive. Since it leaves RL from below, the sign is negative. So this current causes the voltage drop V out across the load. As the current goes back, it flows through diode D4, and finally it terminates towards the negative half or the negative potential of the transformer secondary winding as shown. So this entire loop is completed. That is the operation for the positive half cycle of the AC input signal. So looking at the entire description, we have for the primary winding, the upper half has a positive potential while the lower half has a negative potential. For the secondary winding, the upper part has a positive potential while the lower part has a negative potential. This makes diode D1 and D4 forward biased. They turn on and they conduct for the entire half cycle from 0 to pi, while diodes D2 and D3 remain off. That is, they are an open circuit or an open switch during the intervals from 0 to pi. When this happens, D1 and D4 form a closed loop circuit path at the transformer secondary winding, due to which a current flows in the clockwise direction to the load resistor RL, which in turn generates a sinusoidal output rectified voltage across the load RL with respect to the ground level, that is 0 volts. For the operation in the negative half cycle of the AC input power supply, that is from pi to 2 pi, we have the primary winding, the topmost half becoming negative as compared to the bottom half. So the topmost part has a negative potential, but the bottommost part has a positive potential. For this particular primary winding over here, for this particular secondary winding over here, beg your pardon, we have the topmost terminal now becoming negative, the bottommost terminal now becomes positive. So we have a negative potential applied at the anode of diode D1 and the cathode of diode D3. We have a positive potential applied at the anode of diode D2 and the cathode of diode D4. So we have minus to the anode of D1, which makes it reverse bias now. However, D3 now turns on because of a negative potential, due to which it will now be forward biased. D2, which was earlier off, will now turn on due to the presence of a positive voltage. But D4, which was earlier on, that is forward bias condition, will now turn off. This electrical equivalent circuit can be as shown. So when we are dealing with the negative half cycle of the AC input supply, we have the upper half of the primary winding negative potential. We have the lower half of the primary winding, which is a positive potential. And for the secondary part, we have the upper half is a negative potential, the lower half is a positive potential. This voltage I have labeled it as V2 because due to the step down transformer action where N2 is less compared to N1, you have V2 less compared to the value Vm. D1 is off, and you have D4 off. Here we have D2 and D3 both are on. So the operation is exactly reverse. In the positive half cycle, D1 and D4 were both on, while D2 and D3 were both off. But now in the negative half cycle of operation, D1 and D4 are both off, whereas D2 and D3 are now on. The sign is minus on top, plus below. The current once again flows to the closed loop circuit path of diode D2, the load RL, and diode D3. Since the current flows from a point of high potential to a point of low potential, we have the current that starts from the lower half, that is the positive potential. The current directly goes through diode D2 because D4 is now already off. It goes through D2, it goes into the load RL because the current cannot go back because D1 is again off. The current goes into the load RL with the top part plus and the bottom part minus. The direction is again a clockwise manner, and the current returns back to its lower potential, that is the negative potential, towards the upper half of the secondary winding through the diode D3. So this path is as shown. So we have a closed loop circuit path established starting from the lower half of the secondary winding that goes through D2, that goes to load RL, that goes to diode D3, and it finally terminates towards the upper half of the secondary winding itself. This gives us the same positive rectified DC output voltage V out, which is positive with respect to the ground level potential. So looking at the operation, for the primary winding, the lower half has positive potential while the upper half has a negative potential. For the secondary winding, the lower part has a positive potential whereas the upper half has a negative potential. Diodes D2 and D3 are forward biased, they turn on and they conduct for the entire half cycle from pi to 2 pi, whereas diodes D1 and D4 remain off, that is open circuit, from the intervals pi to 2 pi. And these diodes D2 and D3 form a closed loop circuit path at the transformer secondary windings, for which we have a clockwise current that flows through the load resistor RL, which causes a voltage drop, that is the output voltage to be produced having a positive polarity with respect to the ground level, that is 0 volts. The waveforms are exactly similar to what we saw in the earlier video session. That is, they are similar to the center tapped full wave rectifier circuit. For the first half cycle from 0 to pi, we have the rectified DC output voltage in the same way from 0 to pi, but the only difference here is that you have two diodes on and two diodes off. So D1 and D4 were on, D2 and D3 were off. But for the half cycle from pi to 2 pi, we had D1 and D4 off, D2 and D3 were on. The same sequence of events continues since we are getting a rectified output voltage, which is once again of a pulsating nature. It has a DC component and it has a AC component as well built into it. This is not purely DC because the value touches 0 at the origin, pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, etc. Now, once we have the operation, the circuit diagrams, and the waveform very well understood, let us go further with the mathematical analysis, which in this case are exactly similar to the previous lecture session covering the center tap full wave rectifier circuit. So here we'll be deriving the DC output or the average voltage VDC, the DC output or the average current IDC, the RMS value of the AC output voltage VRMS, the RMS value of the AC output current IRMS, and finally ripple factor given by gamma. So these are the particular mathematical analysis which we'll be covering for today. The first part is the DC output or the DC average voltage VDC. Looking at the output graph or the output signal waveforms, this is nothing but pulsating DC. Although the graph is obtained in currently quarter number 1, it is not perfectly DC because the output will reach the peak values and then fall back to 0. The peak value is nothing but Vm. Vm was the maximum or the peak value of the voltage. So here we have the output signal will be exactly similar to Vout is equal to Vm into sine omega t between the interval limits 0 to pi. This is again exactly same as the center tapped full wave rectifier circuit. Now in the derivations, I will be simply replacing omega t with the value theta. So the same equation can also be Vout is equal to Vm into sine theta for theta greater than 0 but lesser than pi. The standard mathematical formula or the standard mathematical equation to obtain the DC output or the average voltage is given by BDC is equal to area under the curve over the cycle divided by the length of the base. If you look at this particular expression carefully, area under the curve denotes integration operation. The curve is nothing but the waveform of Vm sine omega t or Vm sine theta over the cycle. The cycle is from 0 to pi, and the length of the base is also between 0 to pi. So the length of the base is actually pi minus 0, which is nothing but pi. So this English language statement can easily be translated into mathematics with the equation BDC is equal to integral 0 to pi Vm into sine theta d theta, the whole term divided by pi. Keep in mind, pi is nothing but length of base. Area under the curve is given by the integration. The definite limits are 0 to pi, and the curve is given by Vm sine theta. Solving this, we can take out Vm and pi common outside because they are both constant values. So equation number 2 gives us Vm upon pi integration 0 to pi sine theta d theta. The integration of sine theta is nothing but minus cos theta, and the limits applied are lower limit is 0 and the upper limit is pi. What we can do is just to prevent confusion, we can take out this minus sign constant outside. So this gives us equation number 4 as BDC is equal to minus Vm upon pi brackets open cos theta with the upper limit being pi, the lower limit being 0. Now, if we put the limit values back into equation number 4, our equation number 5 will be looking somewhat like this. We have BDC is equal to minus Vm upon pi, brackets open, cos pi minus cos 0. We have just put in the limits. So this gives us BDC is equal to minus Vm upon pi, brackets open, cos of pi is nothing but minus 1, that is shown here. Cos of 0 is also minus 1 given over here. So equation number 6 can be solved to give you BDC is equal to twice Vm upon pi. And since 2 is a constant, pi is a constant, Vm is nothing but the maximum secondary peak voltage. Equation number 7 cannot be solved further, giving you the final expression as VDC is equal to twice Vm upon pi, which is nothing but the equation for the average or the DC output voltage. This is 110% exactly the same as the center tapped full wave rectifier analysis. That gives you VDC. So the graph of VDC can be plotted as shown. This is the graph of VDC. So this component is nothing but the average or the DC value of the output voltage. That is the DC component present. In an exactly similar way, the equation or the expression for DC output or DC average current IDC is also given by IDC is equal to integral 0 to pi Im into sine theta d theta, the whole term divided by pi. The only difference here being that where we had BDC, we now have the term IDC, and where we had VM, we now have the term IM. IM represents the maximum or the peak current. Equation number 1 can be further simplified down to by taking Im and pi outside, because both of them are constant terms. So you have to integrate sine theta between the limits 0 to pi. This gives us equation number 3 as IDC is equal to Im upon pi, brackets open, minus cos theta, upper limit is pi, the lower limit is 0. If I take out the negative sign, I get IDC is equal to minus Im upon pi, brackets open, cos theta, upper limit is pi, the lower limit is 0. Equation number 5 for me now becomes IDC is equal to minus Im divided by pi, brackets open, cos pi minus cos 0. The same process repeats once again. We have IDC is equal to minus Im upon pi, brackets open, minus 1 because cos of pi is minus 1, cos of 0 is once again minus 1. You finally come down to equation number 7, which gives you IDC is equal to twice Im upon pi. And since this cannot be solved further, the equation or the mathematical expression for the DC or the average output current is given by IDC is equal to twice Im upon pi. The alternately, expression for IDC is also given by VDC upon RL as it follows Ohm's law. We already have with us the mathematical expression for VDC, that's twice Vm upon pi. So we get IDC is nothing but twice Vm divided by pi into RL, which is simply an alternate mathematical expression for the average or the DC output current. So this gives us IDC. The third and the most important part is to calculate the RMS value for the AC output signal voltage. The rectified output signal voltage had two components. One was DC, one was AC. DC was in terms of the average value. The AC will be in terms of the RMS value. Since we have root mean square, the mathematical expression is given by VRMS is equal to square root integration 0 to pi Vm square into sine square theta d theta, the whole term divided by pi. It is root, so we have a square root sign. Mean, the whole term is divided by the length of base, that is pi, and square. You have Vm sine theta, the whole term squared up between the limits 0 to pi. Once again, since Vm and pi are constant terms, they will be just taken outside the typical integration sign. So we have VRMS is equal to square root of Vm square by pi integration 0 to pi sine square theta d theta. Equation number 3 gives us, using simple trigonometry knowledge, sine square theta is nothing but 1 minus cos 2 theta upon 2. So we have simply replaced sine square theta with 1 minus cos 2 theta upon 2. And I'll be just removing this 2 present in the function denominator outside. So this gives us the equation for the RMS value as VRMS is equal to square root of Vm square divided by 2 pi integration 0 to pi brackets 1 minus cos 2 theta d theta. From equation 4, we can easily use the linearity property in which both the terms can be integrated separately, albeit within the common limits of 0 to pi. So equation number 5 gives us VRMS is equal to Vm square upon 2 pi, brackets open, you have 1 multiplied by d theta gives you d theta minus sign as it is, that's the same. You have integration from 0 to pi cos 2 theta d theta, that is equation number 5. So solving the integration part, we have VRMS is equal to square root of Vm square upon 2 pi brackets open integration of d theta is nothing but theta. The minus sign appears as it is. Integration of cos 2 theta is nothing but sine 2 theta upon 2. And the limits of both are common, that is they are from 0 to pi. From equation number 6, if we put the limits of 0 and pi back into the equation, what we get is, we get VRMS is now equal to square root Vm square upon 2 pi brackets open, theta is now replaced with pi minus 0, brackets closed, minus brackets open, sine 2 theta upon 2 is simply replaced with sine 2 pi minus sine 0, the whole term divided by 2. And solving this, what we get is VRMS is equal to square root sine Vm square upon 2 pi brackets open, pi minus 0 is appearing exactly as it is. Sine of 2 pi is 0, 0 upon 2 is 0, and a small apology from my side, minus and minus should be plus, so there should be a plus sign over here. So this is again a 0. So 0 upon 2 gives you a 0. So it will be pi minus 0 plus 0. So equation number 9 gives us, with the both pi terms cancelling out, we get Vrms is equal to square root of Vm square upon 2. Since Vm is a constant, being the maximum or the peak value, and 2 is again a typical constant term, the RMS value finally settles down to Vrms is equal to Vm divided by root 2, which is nothing but the RMS value of the AC component or the AC output voltage present in the rectified output signal. This is graphically shown by the graph as shown. So we have Vrms. It is nothing but the level or the entire magnitude of the RMS value of the AC component present in the rectified output voltage. On an exactly similar grounds, the RMS value of the current IRMS is again obtained by the same formula. We have IRMS is equal to square root of integration 0 to pi Im square into sine square theta d theta, the whole term upon pi. So going through it, Im is a constant term, pi is a constant term, both can be taken outside. So we have IRMS is equal to square root of Im square upon pi integration 0 to pi sine square theta d theta. We just use a trigonometry, replacing sine square theta with 1 minus cos 2 theta upon 2. So we get IRMS is equal to square root of Im square upon pi integration 0 to pi brackets open 1 minus cos 2 theta upon 2 into d theta. I just take out the denominator 2 outside. So we get IRMS is equal to square root of Im square upon 2 pi integration 0 to pi brackets open 1 minus cos 2 theta d theta. Using the integration linearity property, both the terms can be separately integrated, which finally gives us IRMS is equal to square root of Im square upon 2 pi brackets open integral d theta, lower limit is 0, the upper limit is pi, minus integration, the lower limit is 0, the upper limit is pi, cos 2 theta into d theta. So this gives us IRMS is equal to square root of Im square by 2 pi brackets open integration of d theta is simply theta, minus integration of cos 2 theta is sine 2 theta upon 2. The limits are common to both. Lower limit is 0, the upper limit is pi. And putting in the limits, we get IRMS is equal to square root of Im square upon 2 pi brackets open pi minus 0 minus brackets open sine 2 pi minus sine 0, the whole term divided by 2. And if we solve the limits further, we get IRMS is equal to square root Im square upon 2 pi brackets open pi minus 0 plus 0, which finally puts it down to IRMS is equal to square root of Im square upon 2. So this finally settles down to IRMS is equal to Im upon the value root 2, and an equation exactly similar to the RMS value of the AC output voltage, where in the earlier case we all saw that Vrms was equal to Vm upon the value root 2. And finally, as we go on for the ripple factor gamma, ripple factor is simply defined as the ratio of the RMS value of the AC component to the DC component in the rectified output signal. And since the output current of the full wave bridge type rectifier circuit contains both AC and DC components, hence by definition, the effective or the RMS value of the total output current is given by IRMS is equal to square root of IDC square plus IAC square. So we have a DC component and we have a AC component. The effective root mean square value is given by IRMS is equal to square root IDC square plus IAC square. From here, if we were supposed to extract IAC, we would square both the terms and we would transfer IDC square from right to left and then take a square root so as to obtain the term IAC. This gives us equation number 2 as IAC is equal to square root IRMS square minus IDC square. If we divide by IDC throughout the equation, Left hand side becomes IAC upon IDC is equal to dividing it by IDC is fine, but we will be taking 1 upon IDC into the square root sign, which gives us IRMS square upon IDC square minus this gives us IDC square upon IDC square. Equation number 3 simplifies further down to IAC upon IDC is equal to square root of IRMS upon IDC the whole term square minus 1. That is equation number 4. Since we have this particular equation of IAC divided by IDC is equal to square root of IRMS upon IDC the whole term square minus 1, by definition ripple factor or gamma was given by IAC upon IDC. So this is nothing but putting the values of IDC is equal to twice Im by pi and IRMS is equal to Im by the value root 2. We finally end up with gamma is equal to square root of Im upon root 2 the whole term square divided by twice Im upon pi the whole term square minus 1. Solving it, cancelling off the Im and Im terms, we get equation number 6 as gamma is equal to square root of pi square by 8 minus 1, which when calculated gives us gamma is equal to 0.4834, meaning the ripple factor for the bridge type full wave rectifier circuit is exactly the same as the center tap full wave rectifier circuit. This means that similar to the center tap full wave circuit, the bridge type full wave rectifier also has a very high ripple factor, which is typically 48.34%. Sorry for this big error. This should actually read as for the bridge type full wave rectifier circuit. So once again, we see that ripple factor is still very large. It is still 48.34%, making the bridge type full wave rectifier circuit almost useless for practical applications until and unless this ripple factor is minimized to a great extent by the use of filter circuits. So wrapping it all up, when we calculate the output or the average voltage VDC for a bridge type full wave rectifier circuit, we derive the equation as VDC is equal to twice Vm by pi. For the DC output or the average current IDC, we get IDC is equal to twice Im by pi. For the RMS value of the AC output voltage VRMS, the expression we were able to derive was VRMS is equal to Vm by the value root 2. And for the RMS value of the AC output current IRMS, the value was IRMS is equal to Im upon the value root 2. Ripple factor was again derived to be gamma is equal to 0.4834. So in a typical nutshell, analysis of all the 5 above parameters remain exactly the same for center tapped full wave and the bridge type full wave rectifier circuits. Lastly, the summary shows a table in which we are comparing certain specification parameters for the center tap full wave rectifier circuit and the bridge type full wave rectifier circuit. The first 4 points shown in red, 1, 2, 3, and 4, basically highlight the differences. So for the type of transformer required, the center tapped definitely requires a center tapped transformer, but while the bridge type rectifier circuit requires a step down transformer. Center tap requires 2 diodes, bridge tap requires 4 diodes. The peak inverse voltage rating for center tap is twice Vm, which is very high. So the diodes need to have a very high voltage capacity of twice Vm. But for the bridge type, the voltage can only be Vm. So you require diodes of a slightly lower rating, meaning the size, construction cost automatically comes down. The TUF is very poor. It is only 0.573 for center tapped, while it is much better 0.812 for a bridge type, meaning this term means that the transformer is only used by 57.3% capacity for the center tapped, while it is used at a capacity of 81.2% for a bridge type circuit. points number 5, 6, 7, and 8, that is the DC or the average value of the voltage, the AC or the RMS value of the voltage, the DC or the average value of the current, and finally ripple factor gamma are exactly the same for each cases. From your examination point of view, if you are asked a question that differentiate, compare, distinguish between the two full wave types, the answer would be the first 4 points, 1, 2, 3, and 4, because these answers are actually different. And if you look at the bridge type full wave rectifier circuit, all these parameters make it much more suitable as compared to a center tap full wave rectifier circuit. Although you may argue that this uses two diodes less compared to bridge type. However, with the much better advances in semiconductor fabrication technologies, the cost of the PN junction diode is always going to decrease day by day. So using two extra diodes will not make much of a difference for a bridge type full wave rectifier circuit as compared to the center tap. With this, we come to an end of unit number 5.1 for module number 5, which is titled rectifiers and filters, during which we have completely covered the first half, that is unit number 5.1, covering the center tapped and the bridge type full wave rectifier circuits with their circuit diagram, description, their operation for positive half cycle, negative half cycle, and all the required mathematical analysis. Once again, the list of textbooks, the list of the standard reference books, as well as the websites and other online materials exactly remains the same. That will be all. Thank you very much.